So I'm now making over $800 per month with my music. Of course, that's not enough to support a full-time artist, but that's not what I'm trying to be. I don't tour, I don't sell merch, and I'm not on a label. I just want to make music, and Spotify is making that possible. So in terms of market share, Spotify is the only streaming service that matters, at least for my music. For example, I get about 177,000 plays per month, and Spotify is 96% of those plays. Spotify is also 93% of all of my streaming income. Now, the way I get my music out on Spotify is through Algorithmic playlists. This is my daily streams on Spotify, and Mondays are in red. Notice how Mondays all seem to have a consistent bump in plays? Well, that's because every Monday, Spotify sends out a new Discover Weekly playlist. Discover Weekly is an algorithmic playlist. It's personalized with songs Spotify thinks you'll like. Discover Weekly's effect on streaming is enormous. You'll find this same Monday spike for major artists too. You'll find it on Coldplay, Beyonce, and Rihanna. This is crazy. No other promotional tactic can deliver new listeners in such a low effort but high volume way. Now, Spotify's algorithmic playlist ranks songs, not albums. It's just like in SEO. Google indexes pages, not websites. This has elevated the importance of songs and also made albums less relevant. Of course, famous artists like Drake and Billie Eilish can still get massive press from an album release, but most artists like me are nowhere near that level of fame. For smaller artists, it's almost always better to break up an album into a bunch of individual songs. Plus, artists are limited to pitching one song at a time to Spotify's human editors. I can understand why the growing irrelevance of albums bums people out. Albums are big statements. Think of The Wall, Kid A, Thriller. These are milestones in music history. But things change, and that's okay too. Plus, I wonder if it even makes sense to give listeners a full-length album in 2020. We live in an attention-starved world. Giving listeners a single song might just be a more realistic ask. Now, the secret to getting your music on algorithmic playlists is to get on human playlists first. This is again similar to SEO. Playlists are like backlinks. When a song is added to a playlist, it's a vote for the quality of the song. But just like how a link from the New York Times is more authoritative than other links, some playlists have more authority than other playlists. On Spotify, the most authoritative playlists are editorial playlists. They have these little icons in the top left. These are playlists curated by official Spotify editors, and in my experience, when I get on an editorial playlist, my song gets way more plays on algorithmic playlists. Unfortunately, I have no clue how to get on editorial playlists. I wish I knew. I've been on editorial playlists 16 times, and I honestly have no idea how to replicate that. I will say, in my experience, major label artists seem to have an easier time getting on editorial playlists. This is a little discouraging, because if major label artists have an easier time getting on editorial playlists, they're also going to get better placement in algorithmic playlists. But on the other hand, major label artists also only typically get 13 to 20% of streaming royalties. So there are still reasons to stay indie. One thing I've noticed is that algorithms make for looser relationships between artists and listeners. For example, I have around 70,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Guess how many people follow me on Instagram? 480. Which is totally okay. Just because people listen to me on Spotify doesn't mean they want to have a deep relationship. Most listeners will just add one of my songs to their library and move on with their life. I think this is just the nature of algorithmic playlists. They lead to a high volume of listeners with a very loose connection to you as an artist. In my experience, the deepest connections happen when listeners discover my music through their friends. For example, last month I was interviewed on a college radio station by 3 guys, and I was blown away by how closely they had listened to the music.
We just got through listening to your most recent release, Lullaby for Little Crimes, and something going on in that song that is also seems to be a recurring theme in your music. I heard it also in News Stories, is this self-referentialism. You'll actually speak to yourself as Steve within your music, which is not something that I'm super accustomed to hearing.
That's a really great question. And man, not to keep beating a dead horse, but Gosh, it's really moving to hear people to hear how you guys have listened to the music. I've had similar experience with high school students who tell me everyone in their social circle is listening to the music. They seem to just care about the music more, like their shared interest draws them deeper into it. So like I said, I don't tour, I don't sell merch, and I'm not on a major label. I just like making music. And I've kind of been able to do that with Spotify. I'm not famous or anything, but being small and obscure is kind of wonderful. I get 3 or 4 people every week sending me an email or a DM, and it's all something sweet or kind. No one cares enough to troll or be a hater. It's like I'm just over in my corner quietly making songs, and every once in a while someone pops by to say, hey, that one sounds good. I like that. It feels right. That's all I need. I'm happy to just go about quietly making my music. If you'd like, you can find a link to my Spotify in the video description. My most popular song is Circles.
A long time ago, when the world was still cooling, an angel of God ran away from her high home, collapsed.
I'm also really excited about making YouTube videos to complement the music. I started doing that, and I'm particularly proud of Lullabies for Little Crimes.
Poetry waits, hidden away, painted on walls of impoverished hearts just to break the rain.
It's my latest release, and you can find a link to that video in the description as well. Okay, anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope that was interesting.